It's kind of daunting for a composer to have no limitations. In other words, if you were to ask us to write a piece and we'd ask you about the piece, you'd say, oh, I don't care, it just needs to be great. That's like the worst thing that you could say, because then it could be anything.
Let's start it off. Somebody has to ask something.
So it's a little scary to ask questions because you don't want to appear like you don't know what you're talking about, but I guarantee you if you ask something, everyone will probably be relieved that you're asking this question because they didn't know it also. So, yeah. We do our auditions differently, I think, than a lot of people. We're much more thorough. And let's face it, drum corps is a very close-knit, long-term process. I mean, we're together for months. You know, you see each other once a month during the winter, but then again, when you move in, it's a very close-knit thing. So we not only evaluate your playing ability or your level of musicianship, but we also kind of interview you as a person. You know what I mean? You have to get along with other people. I don't want to make too much out of it because honestly, the fundamental thing is your ability to play your instrument, right? And your ability to be taught is one of those things as a student, I don't think you quite understand it. From a teacher's perspective, I think you're well aware of some people are really teachable, some people are unteachable, right? And so your teachability is a big deal. That's a huge factor. We're all on the same team, and if we give you criticism or advice in terms of playing, it's for your own interest. It's not for us to be critical of you as a person. We're just trying to improve the whole product. So that teachability factor is one of those things that we have to quickly determine if that's the case. I don't want to talk for too long, but you know, honestly, there's a thing that I talked to the group about last time we went out, which is 22. Which is, we've been together developing programs for a long time, and they've been consistently good, right? And so one thing that we've noticed is that when you start a program from nothing, everyone involved is what we would like to call the givers. People that are adding to the success of the program, people that are just rolling up their sleeves, are happy to be there, really into being there. The more successful we become, the more percentage of people that we would call the takers are trying to be part of the group. In other words, they just want to join in what's already been developed as successful. They just want to be part of it. What we want is a group full of givers, people that want to be part of the solution and not just people that just want to do it because they want to put something on their resume or something like that. And so that's a tough thing to figure out. So I think our audition process is over a little bit longer period of time. You don't get your 5 minutes and that's it. Usually it's a camp weekend, and it's every day evaluated not by just us, but by the entire staff. There's usually many opinions, and so we don't just trust our opinion. We don't like veto people. Let's say there'll be 3 or 4 people involved in the decision of who we're going to go with. And if say one guy or one staff member dissents, we go with the majority of people. Like if you have 4 people that have chimed in as far as your ability, and 3 of them are in favor of you and 1 is not, then we'll take you. We default in the position of moving you forward. We want to see what you're capable of rather than trying to eliminate you too soon. You know what I mean? Because one of the things you have to evaluate is potential. So we see you at one camp, show you some things. If you can't do it, then we don't really make a decision right then. We want to see you come back and see how it looks then. And that's probably the most important time of the audition, is that return, that second camp. So.
Yeah, there's no like packet that's sent out for you to learn. Has anybody ever auditioned for a DCI or a WGI group where you've been sent? You register and you get mailed a packet, right? Learn all these exercises, and that's your ticket in. And we give a lot of information at the camp. We want to actually see you at your best, right? We want to see what you're comfortable playing, the things that exercises that you play every day with your own programs, because that's really how we're going to be able to see you in your most comfortable. It's more like, it's kind of like a job interview, right? I mean, this is an educational activity, and there are things that we will teach you how to do, but like Paul said, those things like, are you coachable? Like those of you that have ever maybe played a team sport, like it's the same sort of thing, right? You have to work well with others. You have to be able to take feedback if it's positive or negative. You have to, what did you say? You can't become a different person in the middle of July, when it's hard and it's hot and you haven't showered in a couple of days, right? And so that's what a lot of it is too. I know in the front ensemble, there will be times when the first camp is usually just a lot of fun. And then the second camp, when it's the callback, that's when it gets a lot more serious, where sometimes I'll make a change and I'll say, hey, could you put in a crash on beat 4, catch that, and the release of that snare run, or whatever it may be. And just to see how people handle pressure, being asked to do things on the fly, and how flexible you are. So those, just again, like really, I think really useful interpersonal skills, or just like, characteristics of people. I think those are all just traits that we're looking for too.
So you can probably tell by those answers, it's pretty thorough.
It's really thorough.
It's not superficial at all. It's very, very thorough. We dig deep to see how far that goes. So.
Well, and I've had students at college that will get offered contracts just from sending in a video. And I mean, we would never do that.
We never do that. We have to meet you. Yeah. We have to talk to you.
We want to see how you play with other people. It's a group activity. That's a good question.
You're basically talking about experience, right? So experience I'll just give you like two sides to that coin. So if somebody has marched for 4 years and they've got some problems, right? There's some fundamental issues with the way they play. That's a little bit of a red flag, because they've had 4 years of experience of training to play. It could be not their fault. It could be what they're being taught, or there could be many things, but still, right? As opposed to a person who has zero experience and come in and all of a sudden they can sort of get it, or they can improve rapidly and quickly. I think that's a much better situation. So in that case, experience doesn't really do anything for the players. But one thing that experience really helps you with is the actual audition. That's my opinion fully, is the fact that before you actually get put into a group, you have to audition. So many people feel like until you land that position, your job is to audition. Your job is to get good at auditioning itself. It's like taking the test. You may know all the information, but if you're not very good at taking tests, it's not going to show. So I would recommend, if you even have the slightest interest in doing it, I would recommend just doing it. Even if you think it's a long shot, just having that experience. Just think of the players that we have in that group. Almost none of them, that's their first audition, right? Oh, they've all auditioned and they know what to expect. From the smallest thing, like the environment of the room, or where you're at, or the situation where all of a sudden you're going to be put in a room with like 20 other snare drummers, and it's all new if you don't have experience. And then your mind is thinking about those things rather than auditioning well. And once you have that experience in the audition, then you can focus more on the actual content of the audition and not worry about all the peripheral stuff that can make you nervous at first. You know what I mean? Like that second or third time auditioning, it's like a walk in the park. It's easy. So I would recommend, even like as soon as you can, just do it. Just go through the audition process. It'll be kind of scary and new and different, but the next time around it won't. It'll be an old hat. You'll be like a seasoned vet compared to the people that are all new.
Well, and the one thing to remember also, because I know, everybody plays one-on-one. Like everybody auditioning for the battery, you're going to walk into a room where it's just going to be you and Paul sitting there, and you're going to have to play for him. And, that can be really terrifying, right? But the good news is, like, you go through the process, like he's saying, like, then you know what to expect. It's not going to be the first time you're even thinking about it. And also, like Paul was said, I really need to emphasize, it's not like one thing that will make or break anything. So there'll be people that, I know this happens at the front ensemble too. We really, again, try to meet with everybody one-on-one, but that's not always, like somebody could have a really great one-on-one audition, but then not be able to play in an ensemble, or vice versa. It could not necessarily be you know, maybe they're really nervous playing just one-on-one, but then they actually do really well out with the group. So again, it really just kind of ebbs and flows as, like, over the course of the weekend, things can, just the opinions about the students can change too.
Yeah.
A lot of tears.
I mean, between the both of us, we're a team, and it's
the tears.
It's certainly more fun, in my opinion. We both have written many things by ourselves, but I think it's a lot of fun to collaborate. The older you get, the more fun it is, to be honest with you. And we have a similar outlook on music in general. We value the same things, so that it's very easy. We agree on virtually everything in terms of you know, the way things should be orchestrated or played, and I think it's a very that's the one thing that makes it, you know, that makes it immediately good is that we see the world the same way, kind of thing. But the process itself varies pretty widely. I don't say there is like one. We don't like follow a checklist and this is what we do. It usually starts with an idea. Right? And there'll be an idea, whether we'll pitch an idea to each other, or since we see each other all the time, then it doesn't have to happen during like a design meeting. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't schedule, okay, like next week at 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. we're going to talk about the show. That doesn't happen at all. It happens like over breakfast or late at night, or, you know, we're constantly thinking about it and think, you know what we should do? We should do this. And then somebody will pitch something, and then the other person will listen to that and say, okay, let me think about it, and then that will develop into an idea. But both of us are percussionists, well-rounded percussionists, so we're not like compartmentalized. You know what I mean? Like, we both think of the whole thing all the time, so.
Yeah, it's funny. Do you remember in 22, we were putting in, that was a Finding Nirvana show, and we put in a tag ending, and it was like, it probably was like Sunday, before we were putting it on Tuesday, and I had not figured out I had no idea. The drill was already done. I knew how long it had to be, but it was like, what is this going to be? And I remember you called just to say like, hey, we're at lunch break. And I was like, Paul, I think I've got it. And it was like phone at the piano, and I'm like, and then we go here, and I was just playing him just kind of my idea. So again, like that I think just being a team, like he says, I think that makes it really, like, things can happen quickly and organically, again, rather than just like you do your thing, I'll do my thing. I will say for this year's show, part 4, which is the thing it's like 200 million beats per minute, you know what I'm talking about? It's just a lot's happening. But that was one where I think the battery was totally done before we did the pit. I think we had talked about it and talked about the form, but it was like, okay, we're gonna just burn some 16th notes over this part, and here we go. But as far as always, like he said, like always one thing happening before the other, we don't feel locked into anything. It's usually, I mean, we have 3 kids also, and 2 of them are teenagers. So I'm sorry, but it's a tough age. Well, especially for them, for our relationship with them. You guys are all really a lot nicer to us than they are to us. But you know, there's a lot of chaos, and sometimes it'll just be like, okay, I need to leave and go right at the Starbucks down the street from my house, so I don't have to actually be responsible for anybody. And you know, we just kind of work together to make it all happen. Somehow it all gets done at some point.
One thing that helps me is I create an outline, and it's usually very similar. Like entire percussion features were written like on a legal pad before we actually realized them and made them into music. So a lot of it has to do with form. For example, a very typical thing is we're given an amount of time. You know what I mean? So, and it's kind of daunting for a composer to have no limitations. In other words, if you were to ask us to write a piece and we'd ask you about the piece, you'd say, oh, I don't care, it just needs to be great. That's like the worst thing that you could say, because then it could be anything. You know what I mean? And so I find the best thing to do first, what I do first is create an outline. And I figure, for example, in this piece that we're talking about, we had 55 seconds to play, right? And so I simply took the 55 seconds and created a tempo, and then in finale created a blank score and just figured out what is 55 seconds. How many measures is 55 seconds? And then we have a measured, you know, a total count of measures, and then dividing it into into a form, like A, B, C, you know, and the first, before you do that, you have to think, okay, what is the point of this? What is the point of this music? Well, like, what are we trying to say with this music? Well, in drum corps, you're trying to expose the elements. You're trying to show that we're good players, and we're trying to stick with the plan in terms of the theme of the show. And this has been fascinating for both of us. Sandy's a theory nerd, right? And so the theme of the Kendrick Lamar thing is so disguised and throughout the entire show that you'd be probably fascinated for us to even point out like very subtle things that inspire the content of the music. Because it is, like, other than that, it's just grasping out of thin air. It's just like, well, we know we have this theme, we know we have this show, we have 55 seconds. The way to get more measures out of 55 seconds is just play faster. And then if you want more measures that want a form that doesn't take as long, let's make it in 3/4 instead of 4/4. Like, there's a lot of practical things that you can do to get the ball rolling. And then you have to rely on your own skills and your own improvisatory ability just to make stuff up, you know? Like, and I always put myself, I mean, we probably both do this, but I constantly put myself in the state of mind of what would I want to play, or what would I want to see? And I truly just trust my own opinion when it comes to that. We trust what we've done and the fact that we like what we do, you know what I mean? Like, some people like polka dots, some people like stripes, and we just have a sensibility and a taste for what works out there. And I keep thinking, if I was you in the audience, what would I want to see? And then I just try to answer that question with the music. Yes, sir.
I will say one thing in general, we never send music out ahead of time.
Right.
Do you guys ever get your music and it's like, all right, show up at band camp with your opener memorized? I know my kids are in total denial about that for Monday. But yeah, right? Yeah, band camp on Monday for my kids. So yeah, we don't send it out ahead of time.
And we never do that for a couple of reasons. The most important time that you learn any music is the first time, truly. And we don't trust, like, in a good way, we don't trust the players to do it exactly the way we want. We want to show them. So the music will be taught at the camp by us. And this is how it goes. And usually what happens is we just explain how the music goes. We explain the intent of the music, or the purpose, or what's the reason we're playing this, or what's the function of your part. If your part is to support a mellophone solo or something, it's important that you know that. You know what I mean? And we'll just walk through the part step by step, so everybody hears the same words at the same time, and we don't have to re-teach anything. Sometimes the hardest thing is to undo something that somebody's done, and so we don't even go there. We don't even like pass the music out until, like, I'll go to the camps typically because our family, and I will pass the music out to the players myself, and they will learn it with me talking to them about the piece. And I tell you what, we are in such a minority when it comes to that. Right? The mindset is the sooner you get it, the more prepared you'll be, and we want it like 2 weeks before the camp, and that's the last thing we would do.
Think about like your own music, like if you can picture it, like, do you ever have any indication like, all right, this is a secondary voice in the big picture here? I know Paul was talking about that a little bit out at rehearsal, right? To hear when there's primary voices, secondary, tertiary, like there's just like an ebb and flow constantly happening, and every one of those players knows probably, I would say, every measure of the show. They understand where they fit, and this is from the battery through every member of the front ensemble, like where they fit in the big picture. And that's really important. I think it affects the way you interpret the music and how you feel your comfort level playing it, and also ultimately I think it works better, right? You'll hear it when we get with the whole group out there. Like, it's not an accident that all ends up working that way. And like you said about unlearning things, it's like all region, right? You learn a wrong sticking or you learn a wrong note, and you're like, oh my gosh, but I've been memorizing as I go. How do I undo this? So it just saves time in the long run by just us doing it with them at the actual camp.
It's almost, it becomes so simple in my mind. It used to be so complicated, and now it's very simple in my mind. If you understand the music thoroughly, the audience will understand the music. It's almost magical. It really is. If for example, if we want you to get goosebumps, it has to start with the players getting goosebumps. You see what I mean? I can tell lots of stories about times when a player would come off. And I remember a time when there was this absolutely beautiful front ensemble moment that was like heart-wrenching sort of thing. And the player came off the field and goes, man, the audience was flat tonight. And I remember just chuckling and saying, oh, really? You know, the audience was flat. Like it's their fault somehow. And I asked him if he felt the music. Did you feel like you had goosebumps? And it was like, oh, no, but, you know, I'm the player. And I was like, that's the answer. It was like, as soon as you feel what you're supposed to feel, it is an immediate translation to the audience. And it is uncanny how true that is. If you want it to be tough sounding, well, then you feel that way when you play it. If you want it to be like sweet, then, you know what I mean? Whatever descriptor you want to put in there has to be understood by you to play it that way. And then the audience is automatically going to feel exactly what you feel.
It's easy. There you go.
Anything else? In the back. I don't remember saying that, but if I did say that, it's fine. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but when you have like a controlled thing that's happening, I think it does affect the way you're going to play. It's the same rhythm, you know what I mean? Like whether an accent or one thing that's true is a lot of exercises that I use with the battery tend to be one rhythm. And it's something that goes a little bit unnoticed because of the complexity of the rudiments involved, right? And so you can't confuse a sticking or a rudiment with a rhythm. You know what I'm saying? A rhythm is a rhythm, and that is irrespective of the sticking or the rudiment. For example, if we played something like a flam accent exercise with a Swiss triplet, right? We play an exercise, I don't know if you can hear this, but it's right? No, despite how many Swiss triplets or flam taps there are, it's still just this rhythm. So if you kind of always return back to that spot, then I guess theoretically you could play it close to the same tone. I don't know, but I think obviously playing 8 on a hand is wide open. You can play it super fast, and you can't really do that when you're controlling an accent all the time. But you can't let the control or the different leveled notes affect the rhythm itself. That is fundamental. That's basic. So if you start with that premise, then you should be good to go. Just physical force. No, I'm just kidding.
A little bit of violence. You just have to do it once, though. Everybody else just has to witness it, so then they all get in line.
You just threaten their lives, you know. No, I'm just kidding. You know what? You know what the best thing that helps, and this is a very true answer. This is that is not uncommon. There are often, I'm sure some of you are difficult to teach, right? Whether you believe so or not. But you know the one thing that really transcends all of that stuff is the feeling of progress. I've definitely found that to be true, which is if a student feels like they're getting better, then their investment into the rehearsal or into the lessons or whatever is worth it. And they know that it's in their interest to listen to what you say because you're making them better. And I think it's a weirdly sort of selfish thing, but it's true. If you want discipline problems to go away in your classroom, well then you get the player to hear how much improvement they made, and then you know what? They're gonna be quiet. They're not gonna miss what you say next because they know it's in their interest to listen to you because you're the one that benefits, not the teacher. See what I mean? So that feeling of progress has to be there, right? If you go to, have you ever been to a band rehearsal where you felt drained and exhausted at the end of it? Typically, that's a result of you're not being involved in the rehearsal as much. And that's exactly why we're having this meeting right now as percussionists. Percussionists are different, right? You can oftentimes, how many have gone through a band rehearsal where there wasn't really one word said to the drumline? Yeah, hands go up immediately, right? Well, if you're involved, and you're addressed and you're feeling progress and you're like, wow, we've gotten so much better in this hour. I'll tell you what, I've never had anybody in my life leave a rehearsal and go, man, I'm so tired from playing so clean. Never in my life has that been the case. But the opposite is true. You see what I mean? If you just simply stagnate and run the same thing over and not improve, it's exhausting. And so that feeling of progress usually takes care of all of your discipline problems. It takes care of any bad attitudes, right? And I think as teachers, we are good at addressing the individuals in the context of the whole. We can usually tell who's you know what I mean? Who needs to have the screws turned on them and who needs you to back off. Like everyone's different. And I think we're experienced teachers and we understand how to do that. So.
Well, and I think that's part of it too, right? Is I think education, believe it or not, there was a time when it was a little bit more punishment based. Hopefully it's not that way in your programs, but it was a little bit more of like, it's like, I don't want to, I'm not trying to badmouth football coaches, but I consider it like the difference between like I think of like a football, like a big time football program where it's like the players are all just expected to like fit into the program. It's not about the individuals. And I think with music, what is so great, and one, things that we've obviously learned over the years is like, to teach somebody something, you have to know like 100 different ways of explaining the same concepts, even concepts that you yourself have no experience with struggling with. That's one thing that I did. Like I can read music really well. I don't remember learning because I took piano when I was like 4 or 5 years old. So I don't remember ever learning how to read. But I teach students all the time that have no experience whatsoever. And so again, I think as teachers, we have to find kind of that that special way of saying those three words, or however we have to explain that concept to get a student to understand. But teaching is a two-way street. You have to be teachable. That's kind of where that all comes back in. You can't just show up to a rehearsal and just be, it has to be reciprocal. Yeah.
One of the best, in terms of auditioning, returning to that question, one of the most valuable, intangible traits that somebody has is that when you play, you make the people around you play better. You know what I mean? But you elevate the level of not just your playing, but everyone around you. That's a rare and extremely valuable characteristic that we look for. If we see that, you're in, all right? Because it's all about us and not you. You know what I mean? So, I'm sorry, what were you going to say? I have to be honest about that. I was more of a self-taught person. And I found inspiration in, they didn't necessarily have to be a musician for them to be inspiring to me. Specifically, I remember a person I just used to play in groups with. I was just inspired by just watching them play. And I learned a lot without, I mean, that's just the way I was. I could just watch somebody and get what I needed to get and learn from them by modeling, which is the academic word that we're referencing. And I think just seeing somebody that played in a way that I wanted to play like, that's all I really needed. I just needed, and then I would just size it up and really study it and analyze it. And it wouldn't have to be formal lessons, But I remember specifically as soon as you say that, the first person that comes to my mind, it was an English teacher that I had as a sophomore in college. Totally inspiring. Just, she was amazing. And I had another, when I was working on a doctorate, I had another Dr. Marlena Koos, and she was a musicologist, like music history. But it was inspiring how passionate they were about their subject, how much they made me like the subject, you see what I mean? And it wasn't necessarily that way with percussion. It was all about just listening to players and trying to model what I thought sounded great,
You guys are so lucky now believe it or not, the internet has not been around forever. And the fact that you can have access, not only just through YouTube, like to see people play, but like a lot of times you just have direct access to people, right? Through social media and whatnot. It's really cool, like how we can be, the world is really small when you think about it. But one thing to really remember, even when, you guys probably all come from such different programs, right? Big programs, small programs, techs for, both feet and each hand, and maybe you have no instruction. But every one of those situations you can learn a lot from. And so that's kind of what I think when I think about like my upbringing. I can think of some really wonderful performing experiences with like directors that were really on top, like really give me a lot of an idea of like how I would want to run a rehearsal. I've learned from that. And the opposite is also true. So it's almost like I've definitely been in groups where it's like, wow, this is a mess. And you learn like how you don't want to, or you learn how you don't want to be treated. And so all of it really matters, and it's all really important and useful experience when you think about it as you develop into this next phase. Some of you may go on into teaching and and whatnot, and so yeah, just draw from everything. Every situation is learning for sure.
I think the specific question you asked was about being a percussionist and playing. I think I have a lot of experiences where I was inspired by a teacher to learn how to teach. And it was always the same sort of way. They were always kind of calm, and they made you want to listen to what they said, and everything they said was important. And it was like valuable information like every time they opened their mouths. And I remember teaching once in the early 90s, and there was a guy named Jack Meehan. And he was, I don't know if you know this, but John Meehan was is he still
He's not
the brass arranger for the Blue Devils?
No,
for a while he was. Well, his father taught the Blue Devils, and I taught with his father when I was young, and I was probably like, I don't know, 25 years old or whatever. And I saw this guy in a totally calm way, like have the whole core in the palm of his hand. Everything, he never had to yell, he never had to scream. And it was really, I remember thinking, just really analyzing, how did he do that? And it was usually just like the choice of what he was talking about. It was important. Like it mattered to people what he was saying. He didn't just, in other words, as a parent, sometimes we resort to just do it because I told you to, right? Yeah. But as a good teacher, you can never really rely on that. There always has to, if there's a why, if there's an answer to the why question, oftentimes everyone will understand. They go, oh, I get it. Okay, we're on the same page. But if it's like, do it because I told you, then you're more likely to rebel, right? You're more likely to say, oh, right? And so I remember learning from older guys, just the patience and the wisdom behind what they were saying was really fascinating to me. And I felt like I learned more about teaching than anything else.
There's nothing going on over
Yeah,
there.
don't worry about that. They're just moving the dead bodies. Anything else? Any other questions?
Is there anything else? Yeah.
Yes, sir. You want to answer?
407 years ago.
It could be a long answer, but it's not. I'm just going to like shortchange the answer and just say, you know what? When I was in sixth grade, I had a best friend, and he played drum set in the stage band, which was the word for jazz band, right? And he had a dentist or a doctor appointment at one time, and he had to leave. And I was a good friend of his, so he handed me his sticks and said, hey, you got to take over for the stage band. I had never played anything in my life. And he goes, this, all you have to do is this. And he showed me how to do it, and I could do it. And that was the most inspiring thing. The fact that I could do it was totally inspiring to me. And then I just, from that moment on, honest to God, I borrowed the middle school drum set and I brought it home and I practiced incessantly, sometimes up to 6 hours a day. And I just got lost in that world. And I don't mean to make too much about it, but we're just musicians, and that's kind of who we are, you know what I mean? I tried to go in different directions a couple times, but always return, and I realized that, the old Greek adage, know thyself. I just know that I was a musician, and that's the way I thought, and I just feel lucky, honestly, to have found that, and I have loved it ever since. Like, there's never been a minute that I didn't like it. And I think it's a lot of alone time. You know what I mean? As a musician, there's a lot of introspection, a lot of practice time by yourself, and you discover many things about music, and it's like this weird combination of emotion and mathematics and and relationships between harmonies. And it's an art form that I think is unlike any other thing. And I think it happens in time. You know what I mean? It's like magic. It's like it doesn't happen, you play, it happens, and then you're done and it's gone. And it happens in a moment of time. And I've always been just fascinated by all of that. So.
That's a good answer.
You probably have a very similar answer.
Well, yeah, I grew up playing sports. I was really into soccer, which I still am really into soccer. But yeah, I just had a really great band director. I came from not Texas, and I'm from Seattle, and we had a band director. Anybody here just have a band director? Yeah, one band director. I'm with you. But I just thought he was fantastic. I quit band after my freshman year, and he got the job. He had just gotten a master's degree and came in to be the band director. This poor guy is going to have a really sore neck right here. But good morning. But he called everybody that could still be in band and recruited everybody back. And he was so convincing that, as an aside, so convincing that like my best friend, when we were going into our senior year, she was like, I'm gonna go meet with Mr. Eisenhower and I'm not gonna do band this year for our senior year. I was like, oh, okay, let me know how it goes. Calls me after the meeting, and she is actually now the drum major for the marching band. Like, that's how bad she was at quitting, I guess. But yeah, he was very convincing. But yeah, he recruited me back in there. He created a percussion ensemble class. And so all of a sudden, we weren't just in the back of the room, just, you know, twiddling our, back then we didn't have phones. So, you know, you're just probably just talking to each other, right? And just totally ignored. So he moved every percussionist into one period, and we just learned about percussion. And he's a trumpet player, but he was right on there with us learning. And I all of a sudden just got my eyes open to all the possibilities on what you could do. I discovered what a marimba was for the first time. And, you know, I didn't start in 6th grade with like holding 4 mallets and doing all that. I learned all of that so much later, but I think that gave me such an appreciation for what was possible and what was out there. So yeah, that's how I just all of a sudden was like, oh wow, you can major in music? I wonder what that means. And but yeah. And then here we are. Crazy, huh? Well, you have to, you know, I've heard Paul say this, you have to appreciate the grind of practicing. And I say this to my own children that are athletes, and it's like in so few things do we spend more time like performing the thing, right? Like with music, we practice so much more and we're rehearsing so much more than we are actually on stage playing or performing. And you have to, I think, be okay with that. Because I will say, I think that that gets in the way of a lot of students that we see.
Yeah, you just have to embrace the daily grind. You know, you have to like practicing. And then practicing is usually a vehicle. In other words, like what we say, another thing that's probably interesting for you to hear is the way we talk about competition. Because we're just involved in a competitive thing constantly. It's easy for students to get taken away by that. But we realize that any success that you would have, I would say in anything, would be the result of a process that you're involved in. It's not the goal. It's a result. In other words, the goal is to play well. The goal is to enjoy yourself. The goal is to communicate with people, to light the place up and to make it exciting. That's the goal, and that's the process and the road you're on, and that will hopefully lead you to success. So success is a byproduct, to be honest with you. But it's really just all about the love for practicing and just getting to that point. That's what's so great about music. It's so emotional. You know what I mean? Like like the feeling that you can get from really playing at that level is something that's hard to describe. But I'll tell you what, once you taste that a little bit, you want more of it. You know what I mean? So once we get to that level, then it's usually like a snowball effect and everybody is on the same page. And it's like, hey, wow. In other words, we try to sometimes say, you're not going to be good by just having fun, but it sure is fun to be good. You know what I mean? And I think that's true. All right, last question. No,
I I think I got really nerdy about playing marimba when I just through it being like a new thing for me. Because again, I didn't really start digging in until I went to college, and it was like, wow, there's so, you know, discovering all these great performers and all this great music. But now, like, I really like playing kind of everything. And I know that seems so generic an answer, but I feel like to really put favorite, I mean, I love the vibraphone. I'm trying to think. I love playing piano. I like a lot of things.
I would say that we're probably composers because we like so many things.
Yeah.
The composition seems a uniquely fitting thing because it involves all the instruments that you like. You know what I mean? I just like drumming. I like keyboards. I like timpani. You know, everything has its own value.
We have so much, just, you know, through our own experience, like we play all the things with all different types of groups, and I think just through that experience, I think that helps in the writing too. Like I think I'd struggle to write like a bassoon quintet. I don't know how to play the bassoon, and I don't know what that would be like. But again, as far as writing for the instruments, especially you guys that are maybe going to start writing, right, and taking that step, like really just understand, you know, what are the ranges of the drums on the timpani? Like understanding what it feels like to sit there and play, like that's all really, really important. And just also as percussionists, that's just going to make you a better musician too. Any direction we go will take another hour. So, to be honest, we started talking about writing music and all sorts of things. And I will tell you, that whole thing, like even just reaching world class and what your question, it was funny because I was just reminded of a conversation we had. It was like before the block was starting in one morning, and he was on the road with the group, and you were Colorado maybe? I can't remember. But I could hear, we had a really great show the night before, a really great show. And you know what you could hear in the background as he was walking up is you could hear the snare line circled up, and they were rehearsing. They were just on their own. There's no instructors around. They had gotten everything off the truck, and they were just rehearsing. So you like when he talks about like once you have a little taste of like that, just that feeling, it's infectious, and you just want more of it. So they weren't being told to do that. And so I would say like kind of, you know, it's scary at your age to like outwardly care about something, right? Like kind of like, yeah, I'm really into this. But I promise you, you know, there's always going to be somebody like-minded, and it's infectious. Just like those negative attitudes can be really infectious and like derail a rehearsal. And I think just being really into it, that's infectious too. So be a force for good, okay?
We're getting the hook, I think.
The music's playing, the commercial music is playing. All right, thank you so much.
Yeah, I think
this has been really great.
This is probably our last session with you, so thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll see you out on the field.